I just recently bought this Toyota 86. Except there's just one problem. We bought this car sight unseen from a salvage auction, and it was in pieces. There was quite a bit of structural damage up the front, and the engine was also significantly damaged from the previous impact it had. And in the last video, we got the top of the engine block all welded and fixed. And today we plan on starting the car for the first time since its accident. However, with one big problem. Nothing. The previous video ended on us fixing the top of the engine block. Since then, we've been looking online and waiting for parts to replace all the damaged and broken pieces. Because if you remember in the last video, there's a water pipe on top of the engine that was broken, all the front structural bits there, the radiator supports were broken, the intake manifold broken, a radiator too, and obviously the alternator, as well as many other small bits and pieces here and there. Bits are here. As you can see, all over the ground. We did get an intake manifold which is over there on the bench. We've got to rebuild that still. And there's a radiator over there which we've got to rebuild as well. But these are, because they're black, and the car obviously is not black, these are going to have to be painted if we want to make it look all OEM and nice and finished. So that's what we're going to do, and then we can put it together. And since we've got all the other bits for the engine, we can also start putting the rest of the engine back together, which will be very nice, and hopefully we can get it running. I think running by the end of this episode. So, all good. Let's get into it. So as I mentioned, we have to rebuild the intake manifold, which basically means swapping all the injectors, the throttle body, all that sort of stuff over from the old intake manifold, the perished one, onto the new one, which is exactly what I'm doing here. And I'll do the exact same thing for the fuel injectors too. Returning to the water pipe, I swapped all the sensors and small hoses over to the new water pipe. I replaced the set of O-rings, and we bolted the new water pipe to the top of the engine, which was pretty straightforward. And next up, we're putting the crank pulley back on, which we'll torque up soon. Now for the bit that I was admittedly dreading, fixing all the wiring back up. After taking off the timing chain cover, obviously we had to unplug all of the sensors associated with it. So it's now my job to put everything back together and make sure it's all plugged in. This one goes to here. This one here first. Goes there. And this was honestly very easy. All the cables were pre-bent and it was quite intuitive with the way they were routed. So it was pretty much just a case of clipping everything and plugging it all in. I was really worried about putting all the wires back on, like, you know, the wiring loom and all that stuff. Admittedly, we didn't take off much, but I was quite worried about it. And well, it all just sort of slotted back together, which is really nice. So once you got one in, it was like, oh, that one goes there, that one goes there, and obviously all the connectors are independent, so you can't really mess it up. But the whole thing is wired up. You can see them all there, the wires, all good there, all good there. The water pump is on top there, all good. It's coming together, we're getting there. With that complete, it's time to put a brand new dipstick on. We got a new guide for the dipstick, which goes over there. That bit here, the bottom goes like that, goes up like that. Got to unbox it, stick it in. This dipstick is brand new and it's got absolutely no oil on it, obviously. It's also brand new, so it's got no oil in it. I need to lubricate this dipstick to get in because it was quite difficult and it didn't quite feel right pushing it in. That looks pretty full to me. Alright, let's get this in there. There we go. It's in. And with that done, using our tool from the previous episode, we'll return to the fan belt pulley and torque it up to spec. And with that done, we could finally get the intake manifold back on. But there's just one last thing we need to do before we can get it back on. I've got to swap out the gaskets that seal the intake manifold to the engine block. Alright, they're in. And now we're carefully putting the intake manifold back on the top of the engine. And then we'll tighten the bolts up on both sides of the intake manifold. Next, we'll return to the right-hand side of the engine to plug in all the fuel lines. Using the heat gun as a bit of persuasion. And now I've got to slide in the fuel injector cover. In hindsight, I probably should have put this in before I plugged the fuel lines in, but we're here now, and it took a bit, but I managed to wiggle it into place. And next to bolt down that fuel injector cover, which is what I'm doing now, with one very close call. And very luckily that bolt was saved. And now it's time to put on the alternator, which obviously is a new one, as you see, we built that up, but I've just taken off the flywheel pulleys just so it's easy to get access to all the bolt holes, and taken this off obviously, so let's go ahead and put this on. And the old alternator was where we believe the car was directly hit in its previous accident, and also the cause of all the engine damage too. And it certainly is an achievement putting on a brand new alternator after all the work that we've done to get the engine to where it is now. Throttle's in the way, so I'm going to take that off. So the throttle body was actually blocking a bolt that I needed to bolt in that was behind the alternator. So just going to quickly unscrew it, which will give me enough room to get my socket in down the back and tighten it up. Now it's onto the rest of the pulleys. And with that done, I can finally get the fan belt on. And then finally plugging in the alternator. And the engine is pretty much complete. We've got to take off the quarter panels now, because this is a somewhat damaged rail. It should be an easy-ish fix. Just got to sort of rotate back under. But also we got to access underneath there. That's where our new structural rails connect to, because we've cut them off there. So we've cut them off there, and we need access to here because we've got to merge them back up here to keep this as one piece, which is why we've got to take the quarter panels off. Also there's some slight damage to the quarter panels, just right there, slightly bent, and on this side. it's the same story. It's just slightly dented. That's nothing major. I should be able to fix that. Time for those quarter panels to come off. There are bolts holding it underneath, in the door, and on top too. So we're just undoing all the bolts right now. And with that, off comes one quarter, followed by the other. Now it's off with the quarter panel support rails. These pieces are not straight. You can see the difference there. That one's bent, that one's straight. So we just got to straighten them back out, which shouldn't be too difficult. And then it's good to go back on. But, as you see over here, you've got to remove these welds. 1, 2 on that side and 1 on that side. There's spot welds. And same on this side. On this side we have 1 spot weld there, 2 spot welds there. And then that's where we're going to have to weld our new pieces back on from there. So 3 spot welds, 1, 2, 3. We're going to have to plug weld them instead because we don't have a spot welder. In order to get our new structural bits on, we first have to remove the old ones. So very carefully and using a very narrow belt sander called a band file sander, I'm removing the existing spot weld so we can get the old structural piece off. And as you can see, this is what I'm talking about with the structural piece. It bolts in at the bottom and the top is welded to the rest of the chassis. And after taking off the other side, this time with the angle grinder, we gave all the structural pieces, the radiator supports, a quick test fit. With the test fit all good, we took all the pieces off and prepped the radiator supports for its coat of paint. First up, we sprayed the radiator supports with a primer, followed by the red colour. And with that, our structural pieces were painted. You might have noticed that we actually masked up the ends of these structural pieces where we're going to be welding. That's because before we painted the structural bits, we used a wire brush to rub it back to bare metal so that we have a clean surface to weld on. Also, we wanted to spray as much of the structural pieces as we can before we put it on the car. Otherwise, it would have been an absolute nightmare to get into all those tight little spots. Now we're going to spray on this anti-rust zinc spray, which basically acts like a weld-through primer so that it doesn't rust. And we'll do the same where we're welding the new pieces to the car. So, before we can weld all the bits back to the car, we have to measure it against this diagram to make sure everything's within tolerance. This is official Toyota documentation, so if anything goes wrong, we can blame Toyota, not us. So let's get to it. Now using our diagram, we're measuring the engine bay to make sure it's all square and even. We don't have a tram gauge, which is the proper tool for the job, so we're just using a tape measure. But from our measurements, everything was completely fine. And now it's time for me to practice my welding, which I'm just doing on this scrap metal here, because I'm the one who's going to be welding these structural pieces back on. Let's see what that's like. It's still too splattery, I haven't quite got my settings right.
Pretty good.
Well, yeah. It's not pretty, but it doesn't need to be. Oh, that's stuck on very well. Yeah, look, I bent the piece below and it's still holding. Well, it works. After training with YouTube University, it was time to tackle the car for real this time. Look at that. Professional.
That's pretty damn good.
Professional.
done.
Spot on, absolute professional. First try. This one here, solid.
Means all the rails are on. We can now go to the next level.
Yep. Yes, we can, but not before quickly grinding all the welds back with the grinder. And then giving its final red coat of paint. And with that, the welding was complete. Now we can finally get the radiator on and a couple other parts, and we're ready to start the car. The first part I'm going to put on is a brand new bonnet latch. The old one was all bent and warped, and the new one, well, obviously isn't. So I'm bolting it to the front of the car, and now we'll move on to the bonnet release cable. Pretty sure that's it there. Definitely, cable's moving, look, as I pull it. And over here is our new one, so that's our new cable. There should be some trim to take off, I don't know, around here, probably this piece. Oh yeah, look at that. It's a clip. After removing it from all its clips, I could run out to the other side of the cable and tape the new wire to the existing cable so I could pull it through. So it's currently there, like right there, stuck inside of the thing. I might have to use two hands, so you might not be able to see this, but I'll clap back and we're done. Oh, we got this. And it's through, look at that, oh god. That was a nightmare, but it's done. There's a new bonnet release cable in. I've connected it up there, I've put all the panels back on. The cable runs around here, we're going to need new clips for it. It's these ones, but it's all in, attached. That mechanism works. Jump over here. Oh, you can't see it from here, but it works. It works. Now we're moving on to the radiator. It's cracked, unfortunately. So we initially ordered one of these pieces, the shroud, got to get it shipped. I miscalculated the shipping because it's so big, and as a result, it was just going to cost too much. So we've looked at it, and it actually appears to have a bit less damage than we initially anticipated. So we're going to try fix it up. If it's fixable, it's fixable. If not, then, well, we just have to find an alternative. But I think it's doable. So how exactly do we plan on fixing the shroud? Well, we're going to plastic weld it. This is, as the name suggests, welding plastic using a zip tie and a soldering iron. And then using a scrap piece to reconstruct part of the shroud that had been cracked off in the crash. And after clipping it into the underside of the radiator, I'll attach the aircon condenser to the front. And with that complete, we'll move on to installing the radiator. First, we have to remove the middle radiator support to give us a bit of clearance to get the radiator in. And then we can finally install the radiator, followed by the radiator's top mount. And with that done, we'll plug the fans in, screw in the aircon lines, and attach the bottom water hose and overflow bottle. The last of the parts are here, at least it should be the last of them. We got just little bits and pieces that we were missing, some sealing stuff, foam, bit, filler assembly. Cool, well, that's pretty much it. Time to put them on. The last of the coolant related things I gotta put on is the part that connects the overflow bottle and the coolant fill to the radiator and the top of the engine. So that obviously we can put water in it and it can flow between the radiator and the engine. Everything's in here, the water pipes are all in, every radiator's all mounted. We've got to put the intake in, which we'll use the old one, the original intake for. And then we just need to put oil, coolant, and that's about it, oil and coolant. So let's get to it. So we're just attaching the air filter and the air filter pipe. It was hit in the accident, but it wasn't severely damaged enough for us to warrant buying a new one, and I reckon we can get away with repairing it. However, that'll be part of the next episode. And now it's time for petrol. So let's get the jerry can and put some petrol in it. And oil time, followed by coolant, and finally the battery. Here we go. The light's on. First thing we gotta do is plug this in, which goes. There we go, look at that. It's in the OBD2 reader. So what I've got to do first is scan the car before we start it. So oh, battery. It's not enough power. Alright, we just went ahead and collected the charge pack, so
Yeah,
look at that. That's a lot better.
Yeah.
Ooh, not enough power for the windows. Alright, so now I've got to connect to ECU. Let's go ahead and do that. Okay, now let's have a look at what codes we got. Alright, a lot of these are probably just due to the dodgy batteries, so once it's finished scanning, which it almost has, we'll go ahead and clear them all. Okay. Oh. Nothing. Something still wasn't right. And we can only hope that all of our repairs up until this point were good. I think it's power. Don't think there's enough power. We actually connected a battery charger and not a jumper pack to the car. So we drove over one of our other cars to jump start it in hopes that that would fix the problem. And with it plugged in, it was time for take two. Take two. Yeah, all good there. We got a lot better power. There's some stereos on now. Alright, ready? Nothing. And still nothing. And then I remembered that when we scanned the car, one of the fault codes was a throttle position sensor. And there's a device plugged into the car to adjust the throttle curve. I keep getting the throttle warning. Maybe it's thinking that the throttle's depressed all the way, even though it's very clearly not.
The throttle, it's electronic anyway, isn't it?
Yeah. But it says throttle position sensor or whatever, so it might have something to do with this. In which
Can you
case,
take that off?
Yeah, that's what I'm going to do. I'm just going to take it off.
Yeah.
And we'll try it direct.
Okay.
So we took that device out. Alright, done. And then we tried again for the third time this time. Alright, we'll go again. It's working! Not running too well, but it's working. Alright, start it up again. That was better. Oh, that was better.
It's running.
Yeah.
It's running.
Yeah.
Wow, that's bloody awesome.
So yes, the car does run, which is absolutely a major accomplishment. To get from where it was at the beginning of this series to where it is now,
is honestly quite astonishing, and it's sort of surreal seeing it run for the first time. However, whilst yes it does run, there's still a problem. As you can see, the engine's vibrating quite badly. And also, there's something else. Ready? Yeah. I got no throttle. None. I got no throttle. I got a throttle position code and a camshaft position code. So the throttle position is probably why we can't rev it. And the camshaft, that's probably why it's running so rough. So we've got 2 sets of codes. Apart from that, there's no others, which is great. So there's just camshaft position and throttle position, and then that's it. So we've got to do some research. We've got a couple codes here we can check to get that all sorted and fixed. Well, we're here again, and you know what that means. It's the end of the episode. Thank you guys so much for watching. You know what to do. Hit the like button and subscribe if you're enjoying it. And we'll see you in the next one, where I'm hoping we can get the engine all working. Let's cross our fingers. Hope that happens. Bye-bye.